Hello and welcome everyone to Palm Health. We are so very excited that you are joining us here today. Here at Palm, we are a new nutrition care platform that is designed to bring the joys of food into your health. Sounds a little bit different, sounds a little bit crazy, but we're here to prove that it is super easy and super natural to do so. Here at Palm, we make delicious foods that happen to be healthy. And so if this is your first time joining us, or if you're a return user, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're here to serve you in more ways than one. So you're joining for our live group nutrition classes, which are co-taught by our chefs and dietitians. We offer personalized one-on-one dietitian support if you'd like to have more focused care that goes deeper in your food journey. And if you've ever found yourself wondering, what should I have for dinner tonight? Or is the thing I'm actually eating the right thing to be eating? You can always send us a text to our Palm support line. We're here to follow you at every step of your food journey. So again, welcome. We're so excited to have you. Before we dive in, because I know you're not here to watch me, you're here to watch the teaching team, a couple housekeeping items that I want to just quickly touch on. If you like what you see today, please sign up for Palm Health. We'd love to really continue serving you. This is a weekly class, so we will be here always 4 o'clock on Wednesdays, and we are focused on blood sugar. This is part of our blood sugar capsule, which our dietitian Emily would tell us all about in just a few moments. And the last thing I'll share is that because this is on Zoom, we are doing it live. So we are here to answer your questions in the chat. If you raise your hand, whether it's a food-related question or nutrition-related question, make sure to send it our way. This is not scripted, so we can answer them all. And here to help me in answering the chats, we have our head of food and nutrition. This is Lourdes. Say hi. She and I will be in the chat with you guys, helping you throughout. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our teaching team. Dialing in from the UK. This is Natalie Chasse. She is our incredible chef, recipe developer, content creator, fashionista, flavor person. Like we just, the list goes on and on. We're so excited to learn from her today, and you will be in the greatest hands. And then dialing in from San Francisco, California, this is Emily Martirano. She is our trusted go-to expert on all things nutrition, and she is our registered dietitian who's here to guide you in a fact-based, evidence-based way all around what should we actually eat. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Natalie. She's going to tell us all about what we're making today. We'll then handle it over to Emily, who will actually tell us what we're learning.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Misha, for the very warm welcome. So lovely to meet you all, albeit online. My name is Natalie, and as Misha mentioned, I am here in London, central London, and as you may have guessed, it is grey and rainy outside. However, my kitchen is sunny and colorful, and there's a host of really wonderful things going on here tonight, and I'm so excited to be making this meal with you this evening because, well, it's my evening today, because selfishly, it is so delicious. I can't wait to eat it afterwards myself. I am incredibly passionate about nutritious whole foods that are flavorful and textured and building meals that just leave you feeling good and equally satiated. And tonight's recipe kind of ticks all the boxes in that respect. So what we're making is a wonderful grilled chicken and radicchio bowl. I will, of course, we'll be discussing the ingredients and all their specific health benefits as we work through the whole recipe. But essentially, what you're going to be left with at the end of our session is a beautiful, colorful salad meats bowl filled with gorgeous ingredients, including quinoa that's been cooked in broth, chickpeas that have been roasted in the oven until crunchy roasted beets. We've got creamy feta, some pickled jalapenos, maple pecans. This dish has so much going on, and there's so much to talk about all of these ingredients, from a nutrition standpoint as well. And so this is the perfect moment to introduce you to the wonderful Emily, who is super knowledgeable on all this stuff, and she'll answer all of your questions.
Thanks, Natalie. I am so hungry now. My mouth is watering. I'm so excited to be here talking to you guys. Like Natalie said, I am a registered dietitian, so I see clients one-on-one, but I'm also here to teach us all about blood sugar. So just to kind of go through like what we're going to be learning today, the first thing we're going to talk about is the science behind blood sugar. We're going to talk all things insulin, diabetes, insulin resistance. And this class can be helpful for you if you have diabetes, if you don't have diabetes, if you're insulin resistant. This class can help everyone because blood sugar is something that we're learning more now, helps everybody, and can be really useful to learn about. The second thing we're going to go through is the type of eating pattern that can help with blood sugar control. So we're going to go through all things balanced plate. You're going to leave here today knowing how to build yourself a balanced plate. And Natalie and I are going to work together to show you how this recipe hits all of that balanced plate, how it's going to be so blood sugar controlling, so delicious, so flavorful. And then the last thing, like Natalie said, is we are going to go through the key ingredients of this recipe. We're going to talk about what are the benefits of each ingredient, why we recommend it, and how you can jazz up your future meals with these awesome ingredients. So I can't wait to get started, but I'm going to send it back to Natalie.
Amazing. Thank you. I can't wait to get cooking. So just to give you a rough lay of the land, right, in terms of how everything is going to roll. Initially, we're going to start on our chickpeas and beetroots. We want to get them in the oven and get cooking so that they're ready by the time we plate up. But of course, we're going to be talking about our chicken and the lovely marinade we're going to coat it in, how we're going to grill it. I'll tell you lots more about my absolute favorite leaf, radicchio. It's bitter, it's purple, it's delicious, it's fantastic. We're going to talk about pickling the jalapenos. We're going to talk about cooking your quinoa in broth. We're going to talk about roasting your nuts with or without maple syrup, just to add extra crunch and texture to any food you might make. So there's a lot of learning takeaways from today's class, and I'm so excited to talk about all of them. But the first thing that we're going to get cracking on are these chickpeas and beets, right, which can actually be roasted in the same oven tray. So I'm going to talk about the chickpeas for a second first, and I want to talk about canned beans and legumes for a second first as well, because for me, like, this is stuff that I always have in my cupboard because it makes building delicious bowls of food like this so easy. So all I've got here are some chickpeas that have been drained and rinsed, and I've been drying them out for the last few hours, okay? And the reason you want them to be dry is so that they are going to have every opportunity to get really gorgeous and crispy in the oven to add ultimate texture to our chicken bowl, okay? So the beets are just a lovely, further nod to that beautiful purple color that, matches the radicchio. And of course, they come with a lot of health benefits as well, which Emily will tell you more about in a second. So what I'm going to quickly show you before I hand it back over to Emily is how I'm going to prepare everything. So the chickpeas are really nice and dry. Try to get them bone dry. That's ideal. Any wetness, it's not going to completely ruin your ability to get a crunchy chickpea, but the drier they are, the better. So those are the chickpeas. From the beets perspective, all I have done, I have trimmed them and I have kind of scrubbed them clean roughly. So all we're going to do for the beets is to slice off that little tail. For this, I am using quite like a large chef's knife because, beets are kind of sturdy. So you want something that can very easily slice through it nicely. And I'm just going to quarter them, but depending on the size, I'm also super happy to make even smaller pieces. Ideally, what we're creating is this lovely bowl with lots of gorgeous bite-sized things in them, all right? So if you are cooking along, all we're doing is quartering those beets and kind of discarding of their little root, their little tail. However, I kind of like it sometimes. It gets nice and crispy. All we're going to do is quarter them, and then I'm going to throw both the beets and the chickpeas into an oven tray. Separate though, I'm going to keep the chickpeas on one side and I'm going to keep the beets on the other side so that the purple of the beetroot doesn't dye the chickpeas purple, because as we know, or maybe we don't, but beet coloring is very, very strong. And all we are doing is throwing them, tossing them in a little bit of olive oil and salt and throwing them into a hot oven. My oven is on 400 fan, and then that is it. They're going to cook as we prep a few other things. So Emily, you might have some stuff you want to talk about.
Well, it's funny. We just got a comment about how beets are such a mess, and they are, but it's bright color is what we call an antioxidant. It can actually help prevent cancer cells from growing, and it can help with free radicals. So like being in the sun can develop these free radicals. And so eating a lot of antioxidant rich foods can be really helpful. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. Let's go through just really quickly about blood sugar. I think that this is such a good thing for us to speak about first. So what is blood sugar? We're going to use this term blood sugar control or blood glucose control to basically talk about the amount of sugar in your bloodstream. So everybody has sugar in their bloodstream. From eating carbs, proteins, fats, they all can turn into glucose. But in a normal, healthy body, we produce something called insulin. Insulin is a hormone that helps our blood sugar regulation. So it basically helps to assist our body in using that blood sugar and keeping it in a normal range. So I'm going to use my hands a lot, but this is considered like the normal range. Up here is high, and then down here is low. So when we're thinking about having good blood sugar control, we want to keep it in that middle range. However, as maybe with poor diet, genetic factors, not being physically active enough, many times our insulin can become resistant, which means that our body isn't able to use that effectively to keep our blood sugar in that normal range. And so what can happen over time is our blood sugar can start going really, really high and then really, really low. And these big jumps all over the place, that is what leads to insulin resistance and diabetes. And we're seeing higher rates of this because of American diet. And so we're here to show you that you can improve your blood sugar control with yummy, delicious meals. So that is the basis of that. And then I'm going to throw it back to Natalie to see where we're at in terms of the prep.
Yeah, thank you. So the beets and the chickpeas are coated in a little bit of olive oil, a little bit of kosher salt. They are in the hot oven, just doing their thing. I could maybe make the oven a little bit hotter to accelerate the cooking, but to be honest, like let them take their time. Those chickpeas are going to get nice and crispy. Now we can divert our attention.
Can I jump in really quickly?
Yeah.
Quick question on the beets, because I know Emily just asked about it. Did you peel them before you put it in?
No, I did not. You have the option to do so. I don't know, call me crazy. I just don't peel my vegetables. I would if I was doing like a mashed potato or if I wanted something really refined, but I quite like the texture, and you almost get like when the beets roast in their skin, they kind of, for lack of a better word, they almost like shrivel up a little bit and they get like a little chewy and a little caramelized. I just quite like them like that.
I actually was going to say too about the skins of vegetables. So we're going to talk all things fiber in one of our upcoming classes, but skins of vegetables are going to be extremely high in fiber, and fiber is a key component to blood sugar control. So us keeping the skin on the beets and eating the skin on the beets is great. It is doing so much for your body. So I'm glad that we're doing that, Natalie.
I'm so happy that that was an unintentional move.
Team skins over here. Okay, sorry. We'll send it back to you, Natalie.
No, all good. I was just saying, like, I'm so glad that there's actually some like nutritional evidence behind my just general preference for, you know, carrot skins and sweet potato skins. Anyway, so let's talk the pecans quickly. The pecans, I think, is how I should be saying it for this wonderful American audience. But basically, I'm a huge fan of adding nuts to like everything, but I think it's really important to roast your nuts. It amplifies the flavor, it amplifies the crunch, and it's a really wonderful way to add that texture and those healthy fats to your meals. In this instance, if you wanted to forego the maple or the honey, the salad would be fantastic just with, you know, roasted pecans on their own. But I want to add in a little bit of sweetness to the dish to balance against some other bitter things, like this really punchy vinaigrette we're going to make, and the radicchio, which is a naturally quite a bitter leaf, and the pickled chili. So in this context, the honey or the maple syrup to roast your nuts makes great sense. Okay, literally all it is, I've got my nuts here in a oven-proof baking dish, and I've drizzled honey on them. You could totally use honey or maple, totally up to you. And then they're going to go in the oven for about 10 minutes. If you are cooking along, set a timer so that your nuts don't burn, okay? Because I have personally burnt many a nut in my time, and I don't want that to happen on your end, okay? So roughly 10 minutes, when you can start to smell the smell of the nuts permeate the air in the kitchen, you know, that's when they're most likely ready. So just be wary, because they will go from being like not burnt to burnt very quickly. So beets and chickpeas are in the oven. pecans are in the oven. And now we are going to divert our attention to the pickled jalapenos, but I'm going to let Emily talk first a little bit about the nuts and all those healthy fats. I think you had some things to say about that, right?
Yeah, I'm nuts for nuts. I had to say it. But I was going to say, I think this is a really good segue to talk about something called the balanced plate method, which is all of these foods that we're talking about do work together to keep your blood sugar, like I was saying, in that normal range. I want to pull up actually a photo of what a balanced plate looks like. We are going to also, at the end of this recipe, kind of show you guys how we build this out with this meal. So there's 4 big food groups that we're going to focus on. These are non-starchy vegetables, high fiber carbohydrates or starches, lean protein sources, and heart healthy fats. And what Natalie's doing right now is she's working on the heart healthy fat, which is the nuts. So in order to keep our blood sugar in that good controlled range, it's important that we're trying to eat as many of these food groups together as possible. Because if our meal, let's just say, is a piece of bread, or it's only just a piece of maybe a handful of nuts, it's not going to give us that balanced blood sugar. Whereas putting all of these ingredients together allows your body to slow down the absorption of the carbs and the sugar, which can leave it in that better range, a little bit more controlled. And the better controlled your blood sugar is, by the way, the less hungry you're going to get throughout the day. So you'll feel a lot more satiated and satisfied. Your energy will be a lot more stable throughout the day. And you're typically not going to crave sugars and simple carbs as much. So anyways, going back to the balanced plate, we want the biggest portion to be our non-starchy vegetables, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We'll talk about which ones we're using. We also want a protein at every meal, which in this meal, we're going to use chicken. And then we want our high fiber carbohydrates. And in this meal, our high fiber carbohydrates are the chickpeas. And I believe, Natalie, are there any other carbohydrates in this meal?
So yeah, we've got the chickpeas, the beets, and the quinoa.
Yes, the quinoa, which quinoa actually is a really interesting one because that falls under not just a high fiber carb, but it can also be considered a protein source because it is high in protein too. But anyways, going back to the nuts, they're really important to help put a little bit of healthy fat into our meals. So I think we have nuts, I think we have olive oil, but I'm going to send it back to Natalie. I think what are you working on now?
I am just thinly slicing some pickled jalapenos, some jalapenos for the pickling. But before we actually talk about them, I also just wanted to mention, you may have been thinking, geez, there were a lot of nuts in my dish. Now I'm probably not going to put all of those nuts in this exact dish, which is essentially for like 2 people. But I love having these things that are on hand in my cupboard that I can reach for to elevate meals, right? So if I'm ever cooking a recipe like this, I will make more of everything. So like I've batch cooked some quinoa that I can keep in the fridge. I'm going to make more of these pickled jalapenos so I can add them to dishes later on in the week and over the weekend, and the same goes for the nuts. So just to clarify, I'm not like, it's not a nut salad, okay? Some of those are selfishly for me later this week.
I think I think that's what I love about this recipe is that you do so many things that you just, I like to call it like set it and forget it, or like a new pantry staple or something.
Yeah.
Where now all of a sudden, when you have 10 minutes to make a salad and you want to make it interesting, you have these pecans and you have these pickled jalapenos and it's this like, this is the kitchen magic where you're teaching us all
like find an old like head of lettuce in the back of your fridge and a can of tuna in some olive oil, throw it into a bowl and add in all the good stuff alongside a really nice salad dressing, and you've got the most delicious meal. So it's all about like thinking of ways we can just support those decisions that we make day to day when it comes to the meals we're preparing for ourselves. So, okay, let's talk pickled jalapenos. Now, I feel like a bit of a fraud for calling these pickled jalapenos because essentially it's a very quick pickle, okay? So you could totally leave these, and you should technically leave these like overnight in the fridge, in a jar. All we're gonna do, I've thinly sliced some green chilies, okay? And I just wanna like divert your attention to the knife for a second. I know this is not nutrition based, but you know, tools can make your life a lot easier in the kitchen. Before, when I was cutting the beets and I was using that much larger knife, that was really great for cutting something a bit more like unwieldy, like a beet. However, with your jalapeno, I really love using these little serrated knives, and the sharp little teeth can really get into the skin of the chili, and you get really nice, fine, thin pieces. It just makes a little bit of a difference. So something to think about. But I won't go too much on the actual utensils. But all we got here, I've I've sliced 2 of these jalapenos, and I am going to pour in a little bit of vinegar. You could use red wine vinegar, plain white vinegar, apple cider vinegar. I'm just using apple cider because it's here to hand, and we're going to be using it in the salad dressing as well. And it's literally just vinegar and salt, and they're going to sit there and they're just going to plump up a little bit. And the vinegar is going to pull out a little bit of flavor, so that vinegar is going to end up nice and spicy and salty as well. Pickling, like pickles and ferments, is a huge topic. Yeah, I want to hand it over to Emily now because she's got loads of info to share on that.
Oh, thank you. Well, one sneak peek into another future class. I feel like I'm keeping up all of our amazing classes, but we just have such a good lineup of things to talk about. Fermenting foods, like pickled foods, fermented foods, are insanely good for your gut health. So they produce, when they're fermenting, these good bacteria. We call them like good probiotics, and there's also prebiotics, but the probiotics that develop with these fermented foods can actually help improve your gut health. And there's some new research coming out that gut health and good gut microbiome, which means all the good bacteria in your gut, can actually help decrease your risk for diabetes and can help with blood sugar control. So I love that we're adding a pickled component into this meal. I think it really ties in that like gut health is also just as important for blood sugar control and our blood sugar health.
Amazing. I love it. It's also interesting, like your mind must be like exploding with all the nutritional information. I love it. It's incredible to think like how food has the ability to like just help us and heal us so much and make us feel so good. So I think it's safe to say we're all pretty passionate about food here tonight.
Yeah, we love food. We also want to teach you guys that it's easy. Like she was talking about the can of chickpeas. Like we don't have to be soaking our own beans to get the benefit from them. So I think that this is why this class is so amazing.
Yeah. I did see, I think my eyesight's better than I thought, but a question about kosher salt. Am I right?
Yes, so, let's talk salt.
I am using a flaky, coarse kosher salt here as I'm marinating the chicken. So that's kind of what we're going to move into now. So the chicken, I've got diced chicken breast. And I actually, before this started, I took, I cut up the pieces even finer, right? Because essentially you want like a little bit of every ingredient in each bite. So the chicken that I bought from the butcher was kind of in large chunks. And I've just made those finer, right? They're just going to caramelize nicely in the frying pan. And I kind of like the idea of having small little bite-sized pieces of chicken. All I have done here in this bowl is the chicken, a little drizzle of olive oil, a big pinch of salt, and I've kind of gone crazy on the turmeric. Okay, now turmeric is a spice that Emily's definitely going to talk to you more about. So, but before I hand it over to her, all it is the olive oil, the salt, the turmeric, and the olive oil, and I'm going to add a little drizzle of honey, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so firstly, the turmeric, health benefits aside, adds such a beautiful color to your food, and especially to this chicken. It's going to give it this gorgeous, warm, golden feel. The honey is going to give it kind of just a little bit of, ability to caramelize in the frying pan, get a little charred, get a little sticky. And of course, salt to season, olive oil is necessary. So I'm just doing a light drizzle of honey. And I'm also going to add a squeeze of lemon just to balance all those flavors out and get a little bit of acidity in there. So all I'm going to do is give that a toss in the mixing bowl, make sure everything is nicely coated. When it comes to spices, I'm a very much more is more person. And when it comes to lemon, I am extremely more is more. So like I add quite a lot of lemon, quite a lot of turmeric, and then I'm going to get this onto a hot frying pan. Whilst I get my frying pan hot, Emily, let's talk turmeric.
Let's talk turmeric, people. So turmeric is known for its anti-inflammatory properties, and inflammation is like one of those hot topics these days. We're always trying to think like, how can I improve my inflammation? How does this relate to blood sugar and diabetes? Inflammation in the pancreas can lead to that insulin resistance. So if we're eating more anti-inflammatory foods, and turmeric is an example of one of these spices, it can definitely help with insulin sensitivity, so helping your body produce that good hormone to help with blood sugar control. Plus, it's also an antioxidant. And like I was saying about the beets, antioxidants can help decrease like free radicals. It can help with decreased risk for cancer and other diseases. So all things antioxidants, turmeric's great. A good rule of thumb too is like any really colorful food, a colorful flavor, like turmeric is very colorful, any sort of food like that. Usually colors provide different sort of nutrients. So a yellow herb like turmeric has something in it called curcumin, which is that yellow antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. But then something like beets, which are bright red, have a different component. So good rule of thumb here is just try to eat and use as many colors in your cooking as possible. We love to see a colorful plate. And this salad that we're making, this bowl, is super colorful. We're calling it a rainbow bowl for that reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turmeric is a hot topic in the chat. So a couple questions that are coming in that I want to share. So, and Emily, I'm going to pull you into this one too. One is around, does it matter how we consume it? Is there any way to, activate it? I've heard about black pepper, but what are some of the other thoughts around turmeric? The other one is around, what's a free radical? Can you help us understand what a free radical is? And then maybe the last one I will use, and then I'll throw this one to Natalie afterwards, is that what other, if you added one more spice to this, what would you add? Like, what do you like to pair turmeric with? Those are the ones I'll bring in.
Yeah, I can cover the first two. So yes, black pepper can help what we call like activate the turmeric. And someone said it's turmeric. I cannot for some reason say turmeric without, I know the R is in there. It's just really hard to say. But they actually recommend with black pepper to ground it. So instead of just using like a chunk of pepper, make sure it's grounded to help activate it. What is a free radical? So a free radical is an unstable atom or an unstable cell in the body that can damage your cells, which can cause to illness and aging. And by the way, free radicals are normal. We all have them in our body, but there is a way to kind of decrease the amount. And that's why eating a balanced diet, eating plenty of fruits and veggies, anti-inflammatory foods, like we talked about turmeric, that can help decrease like the buildup of them over time.
Amazing. And did you say there was another question about from a cooking perspective?
Oh, this was a wild card that I threw in there, which is that if you added one more spice to like blend with turmeric, what would be your go-to?
Ginger.
Okay. Love that.
Yeah. Nice combo. They complement each other well.
That's great.
So,
you heard it here live.
back into the kitchen. You don't have a view of my frying pan, but don't worry, it's not super exciting. There's just some chicken in there doing its thing, right? And my biggest tip for cooking most things, right? If it's getting fish skin nice and crispy, or if you are cooking a steak, or in this case, chicken, you want to get your frying pan really hot before you add your protein in, right? And so what I did, I got my hob on to like a medium to high heat, and I let it get hot so that when I poured the chicken in, there was like an immediate reaction, an immediate sizzle, and you've got this immediate opportunity for a little bit of, char and Maillard effect and caramelization. And then the next thing is to not push your food around the frying pan. Just step back and let the magic happen, right? The heat will do its thing. So of course we don't want to overcook it. So, in a few minutes, we'll start to rotate those pieces, but essentially to get good color on your chicken, you just want to let the heat do its thing, right? So my chicken's doing its thing. I'll give it like another minute, maybe 2 minutes before I start to turn it. And of course that totally depends on the size of your pieces of chicken. Mine are quite small. So the next thing we can quickly have a chat about, and I say quickly only because mine is already prepared, and it's the quinoa. I know we touched on it earlier. I don't have a huge amount to say about the cooking process. It's simple, it's straightforward. You cook your quinoa in water, right? Or liquid, essentially, because I actually did it in stock until, roughly for about 20 minutes until the liquid has completely reduced. And the reason I cook it in stock, and I'll let Emily talk about the health benefits of, broths and bone broths, but from my perspective, from purely a taste perspective, it's just more flavor. So that's really it. So my quinoa is ready to go. The beets and the chickpeas are in the oven. I'm going to take the nuts out shortly. The chicken's doing their thing. Then we're going to talk about and make the salad dressing. And then we got leaves and assembly, and that's it. But Emily, over to you.
Maybe before I'm jumping in really quickly, I have a quick question for you on the quinoa, Natalie, which is,
oh yes,
when you use broth, do you use store-bought? Do you make your own? What's your broth go-to normally?
Combination. If I have made a big pot of chicken soup and I have some of that leftover jellied broth, I love that, but I don't often make my own bone broth. As much as I love it, I'll just be honest with you, because I think honesty is important in this process too. Sometimes it's not realistic to make your own broth, right? but I do always go for a good quality organic broth or stock, and I try avoid additives, right? You want minimal ingredients. You want to read the back of the carton or the packet or whatever it is and see like chicken bones and salt, rosemary, maybe that's it. So simple, good whole ingredients.
Oh, good. It's a good nod on labels too, which I'm sure you're going to touch on, Emily, but I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, there's so much to touch on, so little time. So I wanted to talk about quinoa. I feel like this is the perfect segue into something called complex carbohydrates. Somebody posted in the chat about like they're trying to figure out what makes their blood sugar go up. How do they make it stay normal? Complex carbohydrates are such an important topic. Actually, again, another shout out for one of our future classes. We're going to talk all things complex carbs, fiber. But what fiber or complex carbohydrates do is they slow down the digestion of the carbohydrate. And so if the digestion of the carbohydrate is slower, we're not going to get that big jump and spike. We're going to get a lot more of a gradual increase. So what that gradual increase does is it allows you to feel fuller for longer. It keeps your blood sugar a lot more stable and it doesn't drop as fast. Quinoa is a really good example of a complex carbohydrate. So it's going to be a lot higher in fiber than something like white rice or white pasta. So it's a really good alternative. And you can always too, if you don't love just quinoa, or maybe you're making like a pasta dish, you can always use like a quinoa based pasta. Those are really good. It also though, quinoa is doing double duty for us. It also is a great source of protein, and protein can help actually with carbohydrates. It can help slow down the breakdown of the sugar from carbohydrates. So again, like quinoa is magical food because it has the protein, it has the fiber. It is really helping with blood sugar control by keeping it from going up too high, too fast, jumping all over. It's a lot more gradual, and that protein is going to keep you full for longer too. Back to you, Natalie. Anything that you want to add to you wanted to talk about bone broth, right? Do you want me to talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Does anybody have any like particular questions about bone broth? I feel like it's very trendy, but basically what I'll tell you about bone broth is because we're soaking the way that they make bone broth, and correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, I'm not a chef, but we're soaking the bones of the chicken or whatever sort of animal bone we're using. Maybe it's beef. And when we're soaking those bones, we're getting something called collagen, which is basically a type of protein. And our bones are high in collagen. We need it for skin health. We need it for our hair, our nails. And so collagen is a great form of protein. And like I've been saying about blood sugar, protein can help slow down how fast your body absorbs and breaks down those carbs. So bone broth is another great option. And like Natalie said, it's even can be used in other grains. Like I make my brown rice with bone broth. I might even make sometimes like a soup with bone broth. So yeah, there's a lot of great ways to kind of add it in, but it's a great form of protein, super filling.
Yeah,
It sounds like this quinoa bone broth combo is like almost like a magic fiber. You get all the nutrients all in there. Is that right? Ooh, that looks good.
Yeah. Wow.
How
That
good
looks
is the color on the chicken? That's from the honey, that's from the turmeric, and that's from putting your chicken into a hot pan. I can guarantee if you put your chicken into a pan that was still rising to the heat, you could never ever reverse that mistake, let's call it, and achieve that color. That's a really good takeaway from today from a cooking perspective. Let your pan get hot. Okay, so that's the chicken done. Sorry, did I interrupt something about the bone broth?
I want to answer a question in the chat because I think this is such a good point. I want to talk about it is that for this one person, their blood sugar does spike with quinoa. And this is a great point because every body is different. So me and you could eat the same amount of quinoa and your blood sugar can go up to, let's say 130 and mine might stay at like 90. So this is all because of our bodies being different. But if you notice there's a food that makes your blood sugar go up a little bit higher, we may just need to decrease the portion of it. So maybe instead of eating a full cup of quinoa with this meal, we may need to decrease it to half a cup. And also talking about that balanced plate approach, want to also add our non-starchy vegetables, which I don't think we've really gotten into them yet. That's going to be a little bit later on. Like we have the radicchio, but those non-starchy vegetables are extremely high in fiber and low in carbs. So those will also help with blood sugar control when eating quinoa.
I'm going to say one thing, which I know there's a lot of chatter in the chat about continuous glucose monitors. Should you use them? Should you not? I'm going to take a guess and say a lot of this is very personal, but if there's anything you want to touch on that, to start, Emily, and then the more questions can come to the chat.
Yeah, well, I always like to say like any data is good data. So a continuous glucose monitor, if you can afford it, if you have the ability to use it, I think it is really helpful. And typically your insurance will actually, if you have a diagnosed diabetes, like if you are diagnosed, you can usually get that covered for free. So definitely if it's something that you are interested in looking at, talk to your doctor about it. But it can be really useful to help teach you what foods may lead to those higher spikes and which foods and how you pair your foods might allow it to look a little bit more balanced. So as a dietitian, I work with my clients and I help them with their continued glucose monitors to figure out, okay, when you ate this dish, what did that look like? How did that increase your blood sugar? Did it end up going really high after you ate it an hour later? And sometimes too, you might even use it as a learning tool to figure, well, what meals are going to make me feel better? Which meals are going to make my blood sugar seem a little bit more stable? So yeah, I think it's great. If you can't afford it or you can't get access to it, it's not the only way to improve your blood sugar and to have good control. There's a lot of other tools, even just pricking your finger, testing your blood sugar that way. It's old fashioned, but it works. And also if you don't have diabetes, there might not be so much reason to have a continued glucose monitor. It's more so useful for someone who like really is struggling with blood sugar that's going high and low.
Interesting stuff. Well, I will say that the next portion is not as technical because we're just talking salad dressings, right? But sorry, did I just cover my mic? Apologies if you couldn't hear me. I keep swinging my tea towel over my shoulder, forgetting that I have a microphone there. So as I was saying, not as technical as the monitors, but we're talking salad dressing very quickly, okay? So for those of you who are cooking along, you have the exact quantities in front of you, right? And I'm going to roughly talk you through how I build a wonderful salad dressing. And we're using extra virgin olive oil, apple cider vinegar, a little bit of Dijon mustard, and a little bit of honey and a little bit of salt. Generally, rule of thumb, I use about 1 part olive oil to 2 parts vinegar, a big dollop of Dijon, a sprinkle of salt, and a drizzle of honey. My biggest thing that I love to use is a jar so that I can really, really shake my dressing and emulsify it all together. That for me is really important because you just end up with a really wonderful consistency of a dressing. And I don't even need to tell you how fantastic it is to have a good salad dressing in your fridge at all times, okay? And this is just a really, really easy one to make. There's no, crushing of garlic and herbs and shallots and all that. It's dead simple and it's delicious and it works every time. So I'm just going to roughly do my olive oil. So a generous splash of that. And then I'm going to go in with a little bit of the apple cider vinegar. You could use any vinegar that you like. Honestly, you could also make this dressing very easily, even without vinegar. I think olive oil, salt, and Dijon mustard shaken together really well is pretty banging as well. You could use lemon for your acid. You could use red wine vinegar. The choice is yours. Tonight, I'm doing apple cider. I love a white wine vinegar. I love a balsamic vinegar. You have lots of options, right? So we've got the olive oil, the vinegar, and you can always, because they separate, you can always roughly see how much you've got of each. And even just by looking at this now, I want to add a little bit more vinegar to mine.
Can I just jump in? You mentioned something I feel like people will love to hear about. Well, so 2 things, store-bought versus homemade dressing, like what's better? Which one would I prefer you to do? I mean, if you can do homemade is definitely going to be best because you have control over the type of fat you're using. So you can choose olive oil instead of maybe doing like canola oil. And you can also choose to make it as flavorful as you want, like extra lemon juice, like Natalie said she likes. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was when it comes to store-bought, the rule of thumb is look at the ingredients. So the first ingredient is typically going to be the highest volume. So for example, if you look at a salad dressing from a store, if the first ingredient is, let's say, olive oil, that's a really good indication that that first ingredient is mostly going to be heart healthy fat, or that salad dressing is mostly heart healthy fat. Whereas maybe the first ingredient, let's say it's sugar. Even though sugar is not horrible, we don't want it to be the first ingredient. That's a lot of sugar. And that means that salad dressing is probably mostly sugar. So I think it's really important to look at the ingredients. Less is going to be more. And then also look at the sodium. So if you have high blood pressure or your doctor has told you to maybe lower your salt intake, my rule of thumb there is to look at the daily value, which I can show you guys a picture of a label if it'd be helpful, but the daily value is on the right side. try to keep that to 10% or less for the daily value for sodium per serving. Back to you, Natalie.
I
Thank you
have a
very much.
question for both of you,
Mm.
actually.
Sure.
You're at a restaurant, you order a salad, you don't know what's in the dressing that they're going to give you. So to your point around, you can't read the label. Do either of you have suggestions on a go-to dressing or like a hack or something to do at like the restaurant salad?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you go
go.
first, Emily.
Okay, I'll go. I'll just quickly, I like to say simple is better. So if you can do even like a fresh, ask them for like olive oil and vinegar, balsamic and vinegar, or maybe balsamic and olive oil, even lemon juice could be good. I would say creamier dressings like Caesar salad dressing, ranch, those are typically going to have hydrogenated oil, which that's a type of oil that is less heart healthy. In fact, can lead to higher cholesterol. So that is something that I would keep in mind. But you can make a much healthier Caesar salad or ranch dressing at home. There's a lot of great alternatives, which you can get into another time. How about you, Natalie? What are your go-tos?
Yeah, I was kind of going to say the same thing, to be honest. I'm a huge fan, whether I'm at a restaurant or at home. Like for me, extra virgin olive oil, lemon juice, and some kosher salt is my go-to. If I was at a restaurant, yeah, I would say the creamy dressings, you just never know, right? As delicious as they are, you just don't know. So I think being in control of what you're putting on your dish is a smart way of doing it. So yeah, ask for the dressing on the side, and then you ask for whatever you want and you do it yourself, and you just have that full control over it. And it often ends up being more delicious anyway, to be honest. Sometimes they're overdressed and too like homogenized. I prefer doing it that way.
Yeah, and it's a good
Here's
point. Oh, sorry, you go.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that like it's really everything in moderation. Could you eat a salad with Caesar salad dressing and still have better health outcomes? Yeah, absolutely. But less is more, like Natalie said. And I think always get into the habit of just asking for things on the side so you have control. And I also will say if a dressing does have like a lot of sugar in it, even if sugar might spike your blood sugar, even just a little bit of that probably won't make such a big difference if that salad is filled with lots of veggies, protein, and things like that.
Here's my plug. So if any of you all out there who are listening, who are thinking, oh yeah, restaurant salads, always have a hard time with this one, it's a great opportunity to text into our Palm support line. You take a photo of the menu and you can say, what dressing should I pair with this? Or help me pick an item. We're our team. These folks on the screen, we're here to help you with that. So just want to put that quick plug. All right, back to you guys. Looks like there's some radicchio happening.
Yeah, so quick update from my side. Okay, I've taken the nuts out of the oven and they're cooling, and as they cool, they will kind of harden and caramelize even more, making them easier to break apart. And then that's when they get really nice and crunchy. You'll see when you first take them out of the oven that whatever you've coated them in, whether it's maple or honey, it's still going to look quite what's the word? Loose, not crystallized. It's only when they cool down that they become kind of crunchy and take their form. So I transferred them to a cool oven tray. My beets and chickpeas are ready, so I'm going to take them out in a second. We've got our dressing. The chicken is done, and I'm actually really happy the chicken's done because it's like cooled down. I think it's nice to keep everything in this room temperature so that the hot ingredients don't make your leaves soggy. Now, speaking of leaves, we're going to talk about my favorite of all the leaves, which is radicchio. Okay. Now, aside from the color and the actual beauty of it and the flavor of it, which is really nice and intense and bitter, I want to talk about how fantastic these heads of lettuce are, leaves, whatever you want to call them. They just last forever. Okay. So truth be told, I've had both of these because I'm struggling to find them in London for a while. So in anticipation of this class, I bought these last week. I kid you not. It's Wednesday now. And I'm going to show you how fantastic they are in the middle and how to bring one back to life. Okay. So all you need to do, and now we're going to like work on the leaves. So the mint and the radicchio, and we're pretty much ready to start assembling this beautiful bowl of food. But essentially what you've got, the few first outside leaves of your radicchio are always going to be a little crappy, to be honest. They're going to be sad and they're going to be soft and they're going to be a bit wilted. So whether you've got a really fresh one or an old one, you almost always want to get rid of those first few layers, okay? And depending on the size, you have two options here, right? If you want this to be more of a chopped salad, you absolutely can go in, halve your radicchio and cut across, okay? So you've got nice thin strips. That's totally fine. I love to really expose the leaf in its entirety, because it works as this fantastic little cup that kind of contains a little bit of nut and a little bit of cheese, a little bit of quinoa, a little bit of chili, a little bit of chicken. So I quite like presenting it like that. I'm going to show you how I will do it. You have the option to do it however you like. However, you take away those first few leaves and then you slice off the base. And then what I always do, this is quite a nice hack, okay? I don't always do this. If I'm literally at home and it's a random Monday and I'm just making a salad for myself, I'll throw everything into a bowl and I would eat it out of something as giant as this. However, like if you want to make it a bit more special and make your meals special, which I think is really important as well, it's a really nice thing to do is to dress your salad in a larger bowl. Get all your ingredients there, dress it, use your hands to work everything through, and then transfer it to a prettier plate where everything is wonderfully tossed together. So as you can see, I'm literally just pulling apart the leaves.
Natalie, did you just say use your hands?
Yes.
I love that. Just wanted to like getting me in the kitchen is using your hands. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to tossing a salad, I don't think anything can do a better job than your two hands, to be honest. Now, because I've got this small head of radicchio, you can see these beautiful leaves, like it's this gorgeous cup, right? So I love the shape. I'm going to keep it intact. And you really just peel it apart, you know, like all the layers, and it gets fresher and fresher and kind of crispier and crunchier the more you get to the center. And obviously the pieces get smaller, and then you just casually break it up. If you have a really large head of radicchio, you just use your hands to literally tear it apart. Okay. Now I'll tell you why I like the flavor, because it is really bitter. Even as I'm eating it, I'm like, oh, wow, that is bitter. But it's what you pair it with that makes the difference. Okay. So pairing this with all of the things that we've got going on, it's just the most unbelievable conduit of flavor, the most amazing balance of flavor, particularly from the feta. Salty, creamy feta against radicchio. I mean, I'm telling you, this salad dressing and feta alone with the radicchio is a fantastic salad. Okay. So I'm going to do about one full head and another half, and just like follow my lead and always just get rid of those sort of sadder little leaves and just keep pulling it apart. So that's what I'm working on now. And then I'm going to throw some fresh mint in and kind of get myself ready to show you how to plate and dress this beautiful bowl of fruit. So Emily, I know you got some things to say about mint and radicchio, and
this is my favorite part. We're finally onto the non-starchy vegetable component of our meal. And like I said about that balanced plate, I can actually just pull it back up for a good visual. We want our non-starchy vegetable to be the biggest part of our meals. And most Americans, sadly, we're not getting enough non-starchy vegetables with our meals, and it's hard. And sometimes we don't know how to do it, but radicchio and making a salad like this is a great way. So showing you that non-starchy vegetable. Now we're talking about also something called low glycemic index in one of our future classes, but just to kind of hint at it right now. Low glycemic index foods. What does that mean? It's such a weird name. It's such a long name. Low glycemic foods are foods that have a low blood sugar impact, meaning when you eat them, it won't spike your blood sugar. And non-starchy vegetables, particularly radicchio, is a great example of this low glycemic food. So when you eat it, you're not getting much impact to your blood sugar. And we were talking about how for some people, quinoa actually might bring their blood sugar up. Pairing the quinoa with this radicchio is going to help keep the blood sugar from going up too high too fast. So it's really important we're getting in enough non-starchy vegetables, and that's a big focus of our future classes is how else can we do that? One last thing I want to touch on too is mint. So mint is filled with something called menthol. Maybe you've heard of it too, like menthol gum. And menthol is a hypoglycemic substance. So basically what that means is it has the property to lower blood sugar. And so actually having mint, even like a mint tea after meals, can be really helpful with this. As long as it's not sweetened, I would say just unsweetened mint tea is a great option for also digestion. But yeah, it has a hypoglycemic effect. So what this can do is basically enhance glucose uptake. So it helps the cells bring in the glucose so that it's not sitting in your bloodstream. So I love that we're adding mint to this. We're adding such amazing flavor with it and also such amazing nutrition impact.
Amazing. Sorry.
That's okay. No, I was saying back to you. This looks so good. I'm getting
no. So all I was saying is with the mint, I've taken the leaves off the stem, unlike things like cilantro or parsley, which, you know, where the stem is just loaded with flavor. The stem or the stalk of the mint is something you actually do want to avoid. So I've taken the leaves off and I've just very roughly chopped it. I don't need it to be too fine because I want those mint leaves to be exposed and I want them to be, you know, leafy. That's the kind of salad it is. So here I've got my big bowl, this giant bowl where we're going to start adding everything, but then we're actually going to plate it onto something separate. So we have got the radicchio and the mint very beautifully sitting in this bowl. I'm now going to go in and add some of the quinoa, okay, about half a cup. And then we're going to go in, like, I just want to show you how gorgeous, basically the pickled chilies, they haven't even been sitting in this vinegar for so long, but the combination of the vinegar and the salt have just brought such a bright green color out of them. It's just gorgeous. So they kind of just think of the pickling as like elevating these simple ingredients. I'm a huge fan of pickling onions. So a red onion, you can literally just finely slice and pickle in like lime juice and salt. Oh my gosh, keeping that in your fridge, they turn this ferociously bright, like magenta color. It's stunning and an amazing addition to food. So we're going to use them right now. So I've got the radicchio, the mint, the quinoa is going in. I'm not going to use all of these, but I'll take like a nice little handful. Look, at the end of the day, spice, heat, the amount of chili you want to use is totally personal. I love heat, so I'm going to use quite a lot. And now I'm going to go in and take a little bit of this feta. I love feta cheese. It's salty, it's creamy. This one is a mix of goat and sheep, and I just love it. It's a really nice way to add another element of creaminess to your food. And the way I work it, and Misha, you're going to love this as well. It's just, I really have to crumble it into my hands. Like, you don't want to come across a giant hunk of feta. You don't want to chop your feta into squares. Feta is designed to be crumbled, okay? And it crumbles beautifully. So just, you know, flow with the way the ingredients work, right? So feta is going to go in. Now we can divert our attention to the nuts. You have the option, sorry, I transferred them to a really large oven tray, which was completely unnecessary. You can see they're taking up like barely any room. You can, if you want to crush them up and spread more nut around the entire bowl, that's absolutely fine. They should even naturally crush up in your hands. But I'm just going to use, you know, a small handful of the nuts. Here you're getting your texture, your crunch, your sweetness, all those delicious, you know, healthy fats. I'm going to throw a couple more in. And now we're going to add the chicken. Okay, so I'm going to get all of that gorgeous golden turmeric, honey, lemon chicken in there. I mean, this just looks so yummy already. I hope that you can see, you know, all the goodness that is going on there. So let me get rid of that. And now I'm going to take the beets and the chickpeas out of the oven. The oven door has been open, so they've kind of been cooling down, but we'll see how cool they are. And then I really hope that I get to demonstrate with my teeth just how crunchy these chickpeas are. I hope you'll be able to hear the ultimate crunch. I think you will. By the looks of them, they look really good. I'll give you a little closer. You can hear that they're crunchy. So let's see. Do you hear that? It's super crunchy on my end. So I don't know if that's coming through, but like you can hear that, right? Amazing. They're so tasty. I'm actually, this is the only thing that I'm going to throw in at the end because I like to dot them all over the dish. Okay. But the beets are going in. So I'm going to throw in about a handful of the roasted beets because I made extras that I've got for lunch tomorrow in a separate bowl. But I've got the beets in there. And now we're going to dress the salad, the bowl, with that gorgeous dressing. And then I'm going to give it one more shake. By the way, with the dressing, always taste as you go, right? The dressing is not done until you're happy with it. So if you always want to keep working it to make it, you know, saltier or a little bit sweeter or a little bit thicker, just keep working it until you're happy with it. I was tasting this, so I am happy with it. I'm going to give that a little light drizzle.
Can I just jump in? I want to explain something. So we were talking about the balanced plate, and it shows up as a plate in our head, right? Like half the plate veggies, the protein and carb. But this isn't a plate. This is a bowl. This is a salad. And so I want to explain how it doesn't have to look like a plate and be in that actual form to still be a balanced meal. We can throw all of stuff in a bowl, mix it up together, stack them, and it still is balanced. I think a good rule of thumb is just think about what is the highest ratio in this meal. And for us, I think it's probably going to be the radicchio. We did a lot of radicchio, like a head and a half. And then we also have the chicken, which is our protein. We have lots of good healthy fats from the feta, from the dressing, and then lots of great high fiber carbs from the quinoa and the chickpeas, as well as the beets. So it doesn't have to be like a boring looking plate. We can jazz it up, mix it all together, and that will taste, honestly, probably so much better too when it's all mixed in together.
100%. And so on that note, we will dive right in and just give it a really nice, working through. So you're getting, those leaves coated in the wonderful dressing, and you're just basically going to have a little bit of everything in each bite. And now I'm going to transfer it. Now that it's coated, I'm going to transfer it to, obviously, use whatever you want, a platter, a bowl, a large dish, whatever. I'm using this sort of nice little platter, and I'm going to, oh my gosh, I can't tell you, like, this is just excites me so much, food like this, just colorful, textured, wonderful, wholesome, nourishing food with a little bit of spice and kick, and it's exciting. The last thing we're going to do is add a little bit of black pepper and chickpeas. I'm just going to rinse my hands quickly before we do that.
Yes.
While you're rinsing your hands, somebody asked, what could we use instead of radicchio? Because it is bitter, you're right. I think a great alternative here could be something like arugula or spinach, even just a head of romaine. But this recipe could honestly use any green you have sitting in your fridge, what's in season at the grocery store, what's on sale too.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Tuscan
can I ask
kale.
you? Oh, okay, kale. I'm gonna build on what you said, but I would love if you can give us a flavor preview. We're like sitting here drooling. Like, what does this taste like? Sell it to us. Tell us.
I'm going to. We've got to add one last thing. And the only reason I like to add the chickpeas at the end is so that you can see all those gorgeous golden little crunchy chickpeas, and that you'll get to them first, okay? And that you'll have the ultimate crunch from them. So now I just dot the chickpeas around. Essentially, what I'm looking at, if anyone for whatever reason cannot see, is a beautiful, bright purple plate of food. We've got the beets, the leafy radicchio. I'm seeing bright green pickled jalapenos, gorgeous golden chicken, pops of creamy feta, and of course the quinoa is kind of blended through. Flavor wise, I mean, I'll tell you right now. Let's have a taste. I've tasted it before, okay, so I know it tastes good. You can absolutely have my word for it. Obviously, the goal is to get a little bit of everything in each bite. I hope I'm not going to regret doing this live and getting a mouthful of food that potentially I can't even swallow, but I'll do it for you guys. So I got some chicken, I got some nut there, a little bit of chili. Let's try. It's perfect. It's so good.
I don't know if you can hear, but my stomach is growling.
I wish I could just share it with you all. It's so yum. Oh my gosh. So yeah, flavor wise, it covers all the bases, right? So talking about the balanced plate, to finish off my portion of this evening, I want to talk about the key principles to making a balanced plate of food from a flavor perspective, right? And you want something textured. So check, we've got the nuts and the chickpeas. You want something sweet, check, we've got the nuts, we've got a little bit of honey on the chicken, a little bit in the salad dressing. You want something spicy, check, we've got the jalapenos. You want something acidic, check, the apple cider vinegar and the dressing. Creamy comes in the form of feta. You've got, again, that texture and that oomph from the quinoa. And your chicken is your gorgeous protein that you just want to, have throughout your food. And then, of course, the bitter radicchio, that fresh, crunchy element, and your herbs, which we have fresh mint. So there's a little bit of everything going on. And whether you decide to make this exact meal or take these principles and make, an arugula salad with roasted hazelnuts and goat's cheese and sweet potato with a different dressing, it's the same concept, right? So you can just freestyle with ingredients that you have in the fridge, but just keeping these easy little principles in mind to follow.
And so that is what Palm Health is all about. It's about making delicious foods that happen to be healthy. I want to say a very big thank you to Natalie and Emily for guiding us in this mouth-watering journey. A couple things to close out. Next week, we are making miso roasted cabbage with butter bean puree with ginger. It looks so good. It's charred.
It's
delicious.
amazing.
And so we hope you join us. In order to join us next week, sign up with us on palmhealth.co. And we would love your feedback. So if you could respond to the survey that's on your page, that would be so, so appreciated. We're also talking, tell us, Emily, what are we learning next week?
We're talking all things gut health, baby.
Gut health. Oh man, nothing is hotter these days than talking about gut health. We are so grateful for everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And we can't wait to cook along with you. If you make this recipe, take a photo, tag us on Instagram, text us to the Palm line. We are here to celebrate and champion all the delicious foods. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.